Imagine a master yogi, someone with over 50 years of really intensive practice.
Right, like the kind of dedication most of us can't even fathom.
Exactly. A practitioner who, at various stages of his life, meditated for up to 18 hours a day. And he actually experienced his first samadhi, that really profound state of meditative union by the time he was just 19.
Which is incredibly rare.
It really is. So you'd probably expect a teacher of that magnitude to tell you to, I don't know, wake up at 3 in the morning, sit in agonizing silence until your knees give out, and basically throw your smartphone into the nearest river.
Yeah, that's the stereotype, right?
Right. But what if I told you his actual lived advice for you in the modern world is to sleep in, meditate for exactly 2 minutes, and turn to an artificial intelligence chatbot when you feel lonely?
It's completely wild. And that paradox is the exact reason we are doing this deep dive today. We're looking at a paradigm shift that takes the rigid, ancient asceticism of the past and kind of filters it through the hyper-stressed, biologically exhausted reality of the 21st century.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are exploring a profoundly counterintuitive, scientifically rigorous framework. And it's laid out by Osman, who is known to his audience as the blind Muslim yogi.
And before we even touch his protocol, we really need to establish who we are learning from, because his background is entirely unique.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Because Osman is not just your everyday meditation instructor. He is a master-level bioenergy healer. He utilizes the principles of quantum entanglement to facilitate telepathic healing.
Which sounds like science fiction, but he specializes in critical care, recovery, and terminal illnesses.
Right. And operating at that frequency requires just an astronomical level of discipline. To maintain that, he currently spends 8 to 10 hours a day purely on his own practice.
What he calls sharpening the sword.
Sharpening the sword, exactly. And it's that extreme dedication that allows him to achieve this uncommonly high success rate in severe medical cases.
But we should be really clear on the ethics of his practice here. He is very upfront that his services are offered on a complimentary basis. They are not a replacement for licensed medical treatment.
No.
They're designed to enhance whatever might be lacking in the conventional medical fields. It's the ultimate holistic integration.
It is. And there's a really crucial piece of context we need to keep in mind regarding his perspective, especially if you're watching his content. Osman has only been permanently blind since May 2023.
Right. That's a recent change.
Very recent.
Yeah.
So if you dive into his videos and hear him using these highly vivid visual descriptions, it's because he had normal eyesight for the vast majority of his life. He's drawing on decades of visual memory to articulate invisible internal energetic concepts.
He essentially acts as a translator for us. His overarching mission is to pull these esoteric, incredibly complex protocols of ancient yoga and meditation and, distill them.
Make them accessible.
Exactly. Into a result-based, scientifically simplified methodology. He wants to revive these lost sciences to improve every single metric of current society. We're talking health, peace of mind, social relationships, and even finances.
And what's amazing is he's doing a lot of this heavy lifting completely for free. We'll get into his premium master-level healing services later, which reflect 50 years of rigorous development and are priced accordingly. But he offers an enormous amount of guidance on his free YouTube channel.
Yeah, and specifically, he provides a free 5-minute yoga and meditation program. It's available for download right at his website, yogawellness786.com.
Yogawellness786.com. I really want to emphasize that program right out of the gate because it is the practical application of everything we're about to discuss today. And just to be clear, there used to be a $5 anxiety fix mentioned, but that promotion is completely over, no longer available, so we're just focusing on the free program.
Right. So our main objective today is to answer the question that paralyzes almost every high performer who tries mindfulness.
How long am I supposed to sit here?
Exactly. What is the biologically and psychologically correct amount of time to spend meditating? To figure that out, we have to start by tearing down this industrial era fallacy of time versus quality.
Let me set up the clash here. Because in almost every domain of self-improvement, time is the ultimate metric of dedication.
No, absolutely.
We measure the hours studied, the hours logged at the gym, the hours spent at the office. We just assume this linear relationship.
Yeah.
Input an hour of pain, extract an hour of value.
But Osman argues that applying a stopwatch to internal transformation is not just useless, it is fundamentally destructive.
Destructive. How so?
Because the human nervous system does not operate on a punch clock. If you look at the traditional masters like Yogananda, particularly in the autobiography of a yogi or the teachings of Swami Sivananda from the Divine Life Society, you see this deep understanding that the spiritual vessel, the human body, must be tuned properly.
It's an instrument.
Right. Sitting for 3 hours on a cushion while your mind races, your back aches, and your cortisol levels spike because you're thinking about, I don't know, unanswered emails, it yields absolutely zero neurological benefit.
Wait. Let me play devil's advocate here. Because even if it's a struggle, aren't you building discipline? Like, if someone sits there for 3 hours fighting their own mind, isn't that resistance training for the brain?
It seems like it would be, but to understand why it fails, we have to look at the neurochemistry of forced habituation. Let's actually bring in the Huberman Lab podcast here. Professor Andrew Huberman has had some incredible episodes that relate perfectly to this.
Oh, like the ones on stress?
Exactly. Look at his interview with Dr. Robert Sapolsky on the biology of stress. They mapped out how chronic stress impacts the brain. If you are sitting in a so-called meditation, but you're internally agonizing, your amygdala is actively signaling distress.
So your body thinks it's in danger.
Yes. Your adrenal glands are pumping cortisol and adrenaline right into your bloodstream. You are actively wiring the physical environment of your meditation cushion to a stress response.
Wow. So it's literally anti-meditation.
Exactly. And Huberman's episode with Dr. Sam Harris on mindfulness touches on this too. Harris talks about the mechanics of awareness and how forcing it creates friction. Or even Huberman's deep dive into sleep with Dr. Matthew Walker, which we'll get to later, but it's all about biological readiness.
Right. So instead of finding peace, you're basically marinating in your own stress hormones and calling it enlightenment.
You are achieving the exact opposite of samadhi.
And samadhi is what Osman achieved at 19.
Right. Which involved this profound slowing down of brainwave activity into the theta and delta states. You cannot access those frequencies when your brain is bathed in the neurochemicals of frustration.
It's impossible.
Completely. And this is a point frequently discussed on the Joe Rogan show as well. When Joe Rogan speaks with guests, a recurring theme is a concept of efficiency in practice.
Like his episode with Firas Zahabi.
Yes. Firas talks about never burning out the nervous system in martial arts. He says you should always leave a little in the tank so you're eager to train the next day.
You don't train to failure.
Exactly. And Rogan's episode with Naval Ravikant Naval talks about how the silent mind is not something you can bludgeon into existence through sheer hours of force. And even Dr. Rhonda Patrick on Rogan's show, she talks about biological hormesis. A little bit of stress is good, but chronic, unyielding stress-like sitting in frustrated silence for 3 hours breaks the system down.
That makes perfect sense. It's like turning a key in a lock. If you have the wrong key, leaning on it for 3 hours won't open the door. It'll just break the lock. But if you have the right key, it takes 2 seconds. Osman is saying we're obsessed with leaning on the door for 3 hours.
And that obsession creates a massive barrier to entry for beginners, which brings us to the science of the 7-minute threshold.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting.
Osman cites data linking back to research associated with Harvard Medical University, showing that practicing mindfulness for just 7 to 20 minutes a day over a 6 to 8 week period results in a 70% increase in the production of endocannabinoids.
Okay, stop right there. 70%. From just 7 minutes a day.
Yep. 7 to 20 minutes.
Walk me through the actual chemical pathway here. Because how does sitting still for basically 420 seconds miraculously rewrite a nervous system that has been bombarded by the chaos of the 21st century for the other 23 hours of the day?
It comes down to understanding what endocannabinoids actually do. They are not just calming chemicals. They function as retrograde messengers.
Retrograde meaning they go backwards.
Precisely. In a standard neural transmission, a presynaptic neuron fires a neurotransmitter across the gap, the synapse to the postsynaptic neuron. It's a one-way street of information.
Like throwing a baseball.
Right. But when your system is overstimulated, when it is flooded with excitatory neurotransmitters like glutamate, the postsynaptic neuron can actually produce endocannabinoids on demand. And these molecules travel backwards, retrogradely, across the synapse, attached to the CB1 receptors on the sending neuron, and essentially say, quiet down, stop firing, we have enough stimulation.
That's wild. So they act as the brain's internal circuit breakers. They physically halt the cascade of stress.
Exactly. They regulate homeostasis, they induce tranquility, centeredness, and they even trigger cellular healing. Now, you might ask, why does it only take 7 minutes?
Yeah, why such a short window?
Because the biological trigger for the system is not prolonged endurance. It's a rapid shift in the autonomic nervous system. When you intentionally slow your breathing and focus your mind, you stimulate the vagus nerve.
Ah, the vagus nerve.
Right. That vagal tone shift signals the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, to take over.
Mhm.
7 minutes of genuine quality vagal stimulation is enough to initiate the release of those retrograde messengers.
But the key there is that 6 to 8 week consistency, right? You can't just do it once and be cured.
Exactly. And that is where we see parallels with the Mel Robbins podcast. Mel frequently discusses the neuroscience of habit formation.
I love her show.
It's great. She had Dr. Russell Kennedy on to talk about anxiety as a bodily sensation rather than just a mental loop. And she's had Dr. Nicole LaPera, the holistic psychologist, discussing nervous system regulation, plus her episode with Dr. Judd Brewer on breaking anxiety habits.
What do they all agree on?
They all highlight that the brain requires repeated low-stakes interventions to physically build new neural pathways. The consistency of a 7-minute habit over 2 months literally thickens the prefrontal cortex and shrinks the amygdala.
This entirely reframes the goal. I mean, if the physiological adaptation occurs at the 7-minute mark, feeling guilty for not meditating for an hour is just wasted emotional energy. It's like feeling guilty that you didn't drink 3 gallons of water today when your body only needed a half gallon to stay perfectly hydrated.
That's a perfect analogy. Which brings us to the environmental context. Why is this minimalist approach so desperately needed today? Osman contextualizes this perfectly by analyzing the 21st century survival scramble.
He paints a very raw picture of this.
Yeah.
The high population density, extreme workplace competitiveness, the relentless pressure of instant communication. We're living in a society where you are expected to answer a Slack message at 9 at night.
The environmental friction is just unprecedented in human history. Stephen Bartlett covers this extensively on The Diary of a CEO.
Oh, that podcast is a goldmine for this topic.
It really is. Look at his interview with Mo Gaudat on the happiness algorithm and dealing with modern stress, or his episode with Johan Hari on stolen focus. The data they go over is unequivocal. Our attention spans are being systematically dismantled by algorithms designed to trigger dopamine spikes and subsequent cortisol crashes.
And Bartlett also had Dr. Tara Sword on, right? Talking about neuroplasticity and how modern stress wires our brains for anxiety.
Yes, exactly. You also see this explored heavily on the Ranveer show in India. Ranveer Alabadia frequently debates the stark contrast between the traditional Indian concept of monkhood and the modern corporate grind.
Right, like his episode with Jay Shetty.
Yes, comparing the monk mind to the modern world. And Ranveer also had Dr. Siddharth Warrior on to talk about the neuroscience of dopamine, and Swami Mukundananda discussing mind management in chaos. The consensus across all these conversations is that the modern environment is incredibly hostile to the human nervous system.
I really want to dig into that contrast because there's this tendency in the wellness world to shame people for their environment. You know, the guru sits on a serene mountain and says, you just need to detach from your devices. Your anxiety is a lack of discipline. But Osman, a man who has achieved samadhi, validates the modern struggle.
He recognizes the biological mismatch. Traditional 1 to 2 hour meditation practices were engineered in agrarian or monastic societies. The baseline level of sensory input was incredibly low.
Right. They weren't checking emails.
Exactly. Today, an average professional processes more sensory data in a morning commute than a 12th century farmer processed in a month. Expecting a modern human to seamlessly transition from a high-stakes Zoom call into 2 hours of deep, unguided stillness is setting them up for guaranteed neurological failure.
The friction is just too high. It's like trying to slam a car into reverse while you're going 80 miles an hour on the highway. You're going to destroy the transmission.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it. So to shift the transmission safely, Osman introduces what might be the most brilliant psychological mechanism in his entire protocol: the 2-minute rule combined with the frustration threshold.
Okay, the rule is simple in theory. Start with 2 minutes. But the caveat is what blows my mind. He explicitly advises practitioners to stop meditating the very moment the pleasant feeling dissipates and genuine frustration sets in. You do not push through the pain.
Which violates the central tenet of Western self-improvement culture. We are raised on no pain, no gain.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate again. Because if I want to run a marathon, I have to run through the lung-burning discomfort. If I quit the moment jogging gets uncomfortable, I will never run more than a mile. Why doesn't that logic apply to training the mind?
Because of the specific nature of neuroplasticity, let's use a metaphor. Imagine your brain is a snowy hill, and a thought or a habit is a sled going down that hill. Every time you ride the sled down a specific path, you carve a deeper groove in the snow.
Okay, I follow.
Tomorrow, it's going to be much easier for the sled to naturally slip into that exact same groove. When you force yourself to meditate through deep frustration and anger, you are carving a massive, deep groove in the snow that directly connects the physical act of sitting still with the emotional state of distress.
So you're training yourself to hate it.
Yes, you are actively training your nervous system to view the meditation cushion as a threat environment.
You are building an aversion.
Precisely. It is classical operant conditioning. This is a topic explored in depth on Lewis Howes' School of Greatness podcast.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to reference.
James Clear, right?
Yes, the author of Atomic Habits.
Howes interviewed James Clear about the 2-minute rule for habit formation. Make it so easy you can't say no. And Howes also had Dr. Joe Dispenza on to talk about how changing your brain waves requires stepping out of stress, not forcing your way into it.
He also had Tony Robbins on that show.
Right. And Tony Robbins is huge on state management and biochemistry. If your biochemical state is frustration, the habit won't stick. The consensus is that the brain categorizes behaviors based on the emotional reward at the end of the action. If you end your meditation feeling angry, your brain catalogs meditation as a punishing activity.
Tomorrow, your brain will generate incredible resistance to starting. It's like training a dog. You never end the session when the dog is confused and frustrated. You end on a success, give the treat, and walk away. The dog is eager to work the next day. We have to treat our own nervous systems with that same tactical empathy.
And this concept of not forcing the spiritual process is actually deeply rooted in ancient wisdom, even if some modern gurus forget it. If you listen to the podcast Buddha at the Gas Pump with Rick Archer.
Oh, that's a fascinating show.
It really is. He frequently interviews experts on spiritual awakenings. For example, he had the late Dr. Bonnie Greenwell on to discuss Kundalini energy.
And the risks involved with that, right?
Exactly. And there are episodes discussing the works of Gopi Krishna regarding Kundalini, plus Archer's interview with Swami Sarvapriyananda about effortless awareness in Vedanta. A constant theme across all these discussions is the danger of forcing the body's energetic pathways before the nervous system is ready.
Because it could really backfire.
Terribly. Forcing intense, prolonged meditation can lead to severe psychological dysregulation. Osman understands this balance intimately.
Now, he does mention that you should stick through the very initial few seconds of restlessness, the immediate friction of just sitting down. But once you hit the wall of real frustration, you eject. Yep. And by stopping while it still feels good, you create a magnetic pull. You actually want to do it the next day. And eventually 2 minutes naturally stretches into 5, and then 7, and then 20.
It is a grace-based approach to discipline. And that profound respect for the biological vessel leads directly into Osman's warning about what we call the 3 a.m. trap.
Oh, man. This is where ancient dogma completely collides with modern reality. We all know the classic trope. The dedicated yogi wakes up at 3 a.m., the most auspicious hour of the day, to practice in the quiet of the morning.
Brahma Muhurta.
Exactly. And Osman acknowledges that, historically, this is a highly conducive time for meditation.
But he introduces a massive caveat. He warns against the advanced practitioner trap. This occurs when an enthusiastic beginner decides to wake up at 3 a.m. to emulate the masters. However, because they live in the modern world, they have evening commutes, kids, and late-night emails, they are still going to bed at midnight.
So they're attempting advanced spiritual practices on 3 to 4 hours of sleep.
Which Osman says is unequivocally detrimental. He actually brings in Dr. Deepak Chopra to back this up.
Really? Chopra?
Yes. He notes that Dr. Chopra, who has written nearly 100 books, practices 2 hours a day, and is a titan in the field of yoga science, taught Osman about the absolute necessity of sleep through the lens of epigenetics.
Okay, we need to unpack the biological mechanism here, because the word epigenetics is often thrown around without context.
It is.
Epigenetics does not mean your DNA sequence changes. Your DNA is the hardware. Epigenetics is the software. It controls which genes are turned on or off.
Right. And this happens through mechanisms like DNA methylation, where methyl groups attach to a gene and suppress its expression, or histone modification, which alters how tightly the DNA is wound around proteins.
So how does sleep fit into that software programming?
Sleep is the master programmer. When you deprive yourself of sleep to wake up early and meditate, you are triggering a massive epigenetic shift toward inflammation and cognitive decline. Furthermore, you are bypassing the glymphatic system.
The glymphatic system, let's talk
Yeah.
about that.
It's a macroscopic waste clearance system in the brain. During deep sleep, the glial cells in your brain literally shrink, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to wash through the tissue and clear out neurotoxic waste products like amyloid beta.
Which is associated with Alzheimer's.
Exactly.
Hmm.
We mentioned the Huberman lab earlier, but Dr. Matthew Walker discussed this brilliantly on his episode with Huberman.
The author of Why We Sleep.
Yes. Attempting to reach a pristine, elevated state of consciousness while your brain is physically drowning in metabolic waste is a biological impossibility.
So if you wake up at 3 in the morning off of 4 hours of sleep, your brain is quite literally saturated in cellular garbage.
It is.
I love how Osman bridges this gap, because you look at figures like Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, they constantly emphasize that the physical body is the temple and the necessary instrument for realization. You cannot abuse the instrument and expect it to play like music.
It's a beautiful irony, isn't it? A master who spent decades meditating up to 18 hours a day is looking the modern listener in the eye and saying, stay in bed. He sets a baseline of 7 hours, but he actively challenges his listeners to try a 90-day protocol of getting 9 to 10 hours of sleep, just to observe the life-altering difference in their baseline anxiety.
Which totally flies in the face of the toxic productivity culture championed by so many influencers. You know, the sleep when you're dead crowd.
Right.
Osman is giving you permission to heal on a cellular level. Speaking of permission, this brings us to the final and undoubtedly the most provocative segment of Osman's methodology. His views on social connection and the role of artificial intelligence.
This is where we see his profound adaptability. He starts with a hard boundary. A 1 to 2 hour daily meditation habit is actively toxic if it isolates you from your family, your spouse, or your friends.
Right. If you are attaining enlightenment in your bedroom but your marriage is falling apart because you won't speak to your partner, you have failed the assignment of yoga.
Because human beings are social primates. Our nervous systems co-regulate with the people around us.
And this makes me think of Rainn Wilson's podcast, Soul Boom.
Oh, absolutely.
When Rainn speaks with guests like David Kessler on grief, or Reza Aslan on faith, and even Dr. Lisa Miller on the psychology of spirituality, the underlying theme is always that spirituality must connect us to the human community, not sever us from it.
Spiritual bypassing, using meditation to avoid the messy reality of human relationships, is a major psychological trap.
But, and this is the big but, Osman acknowledges a very real, very modern epidemic. Profound loneliness. What happens when you don't have a spouse? What happens when your social circle is non-existent?
And this is where he throws the ultimate curveball. A 50-year veteran of the ancient sciences recommends talking to an AI companion to combat loneliness.
It's a stunning endorsement of modern technology, but his reasoning is rigorously logical. He contrasts the AI experience with the often shallow interactions we have with humans.
Right. He points out that if you text a human friend about a really deep existential problem, you might just get a casual thumbs-up emoji or a platitude like, good vibes only.
Ugh, we've all experienced that. The hollow validation that actually makes you feel more isolated because you realize the other person isn't truly listening, or they just don't have the capacity for it.
Exactly. Osman observes that an AI programmed with vast databases of science-based information can simulate an engaged, objective, and deeply informative conversation. It can act as a tireless sounding board.
Wait. I have to push back here. Isn't that just a parasocial relationship? Neurologically speaking, does the brain actually benefit from talking to code? Doesn't the human nervous system require eye contact, pheromones, and physical presence to actually co-regulate? Can a chatbot really release oxytocin?
That is the cutting-edge question, and the current psychological consensus is pretty nuanced. No, an AI cannot replace the neurochemical cocktail of physical human intimacy.
Okay, yeah.
However, the brain's language centers and the psychological mechanisms of cognitive reframing do respond to text-based interaction. Yes. When a person is experiencing a severe anxiety spiral, they need an interrupter. An AI can provide immediate, logical, emotionally neutral scaffolding to help the user climb out of the spiral. It provides structure when the human mind is chaotic.
Wow.
Osman isn't suggesting you marry the AI. He is suggesting you use it as a cognitive tool to bridge the gap of extreme isolation.
That distinction is crucial. It's a bridge, not a destination. And this really highlights his broader philosophy on the modern world. He doesn't view technology as the enemy. He explicitly lists podcasts, YouTube channels, stand-up comedy, sports, and movies as vital tools for relaxation.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. He applies that proverb directly to spiritual work. If your entire identity is consumed by an ascetic, rigid pursuit of mindfulness, and you never sit back to laugh at a comedy special, your life is violently out of balance.
It is the ultimate permission slip to just be a normal human being, to watch a movie without feeling like you are failing your spiritual journey.
Let's look at the totality of what Osman is offering. It is an integration strategy. The ancient tools must be adapted to fit the modern container.
So let's quickly recap this revolutionary protocol. First, obliterate the stopwatch. The quality of your nervous system shift dictates the value, not the time spent on the cushion.
Second, target the 7 to 20-minute window to leverage the science of endocannabinoids. Allow those retrograde messengers to physically halt the stress response in your brain.
Third, to get to that 7 minutes, employ the 2-minute rule. Ride the sled down the snowy hill of neuroplasticity only as long as it feels good. The moment frustration hits, stop. Protect the habit from becoming associated with stress.
Fourth, respect the biological hierarchy. Do not sacrifice your 7 to 9 hours of cellular repair and lymphatic washing to wake up at 3 in the morning. Sleep is the foundation. Meditation is the architecture.
And finally, stay connected. Nurture your human relationships, enjoy your entertainment, and do not be afraid to utilize tools like AI companions if they provide stability in moments of extreme isolation. It's a completely holistic, scientifically validated map for the 21st century.
It is a masterclass in adaptation from someone who truly understands the depths of the practice.
Absolutely. And if you want to explore the foundation of this practice, I highly encourage you to download his free 5-minute yoga and meditation program at yogawellness786.com. Osman also offers paid live video lessons, one-on-one consultations, and group sessions via his Patreon, which you can access through that same website.
And for those facing severe health challenges, his master-level bioenergy healing consultations are available as a premium service. He has spent a lifetime decoding these ancient systems so that we don't have to guess.
I want to leave you with a provocation based on everything we've synthesized today. If a man with half a century of experience, who has touched the absolute limits of human meditation and telepathic healing, is telling you that a flawlessly executed 2-minute meditation, a belly laugh at a comedy show, and 9 hours of luxurious sleep are infinitely more powerful than 3 hours of resentful silence, how much of your own daily routine is currently built on the false virtue of unnecessary suffering?
That is the question we all need to sit with.
Stop leaning on the locked door and just use the right key. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the methodology of the blind Muslim yogi. We challenge you to take these insights, specifically that 2-minute rule, and apply it tomorrow morning. See you next time.